I love you. And I always have in my own deranged way.
This is the Godfather of cinema, and I thank you for watching part 3 of my analysis of director Ingmar Bergman's 1974 film Scenes from a Marriage. In Scenes from a Marriage, a well-off middle-class couple is the subject of a magazine article on the perfect marriage. Marianne and Johan seem to have everything, at least on the surface. Good jobs, a nice home, 2 beautiful daughters, good relationships with their families, active social lives. Marianne and Johan rarely disagree about anything.
The whole concept's a complete fallacy.
Okay.
So it comes as a shock to Marianne when Johan comes home from work one day to tell her, completely out of the blue, that he is unhappy and has been so for years, and that he is leaving her for a younger woman at work named Paula. Abandoned, cold, and afraid, Marianne can only speculate as to what went wrong in a marriage that just the day before seemed picture perfect. The first film analysis in this series looked at the underlying issues that led to Johan leaving Marianne and their 2 daughters to go live with his mistress. The second video in this series looked at the psychological factors behind why Johan and Marianne chose to marry, the role that their parents played, and how they came to view themselves and each other during their marriage, how Marianne reclaims her confidence and independence during her separation from Johan, and finally their divorce. This video will look at the aftermath of their divorce, their reunion, and their new perspectives on their former marriage, their parents, children, and themselves. Throughout their marriage, Johan and Marianne were dishonest with each other. Johan followed the path of least resistance by simply going along with Marianne on everything she wanted, and followed all of her traditions, such as birthdays, holidays, where they had to go for their vacations, their obligations, to visit her parents for dinner every Sunday. Therefore, when Marianne brings up the subject of them having a baby, he explains to her in so many words that voicing his honest opinion on such matters is not in his nature. But after she tells Johan that she is leaving her pregnancy in God's hands, his tact and consideration for her feelings vanish, and he voices his honest opinion that he is not crazy about her having their baby. But after seeing the negative effect of his opinion on her face, Johan placates her by lying and telling her that he looks forward to her having their baby. In fact, Marianne's allergic reaction to his honesty in their relationship is the reason why Johan does not share his poems with her, choosing instead to share this honest side of himself with a female colleague named Ava. As Johan finds married life to be easier in lying to Marianne, she also finds married life to be easier in lying to him. After the birth of their second daughter, Corinne, they stopped making love. At the time, they viewed the death of this essential element of their marriage as the natural result of her giving birth to both of their daughters. In close succession, this loss of physical intimacy, Marianne now realizes and explains to Johan in hindsight, was a warning that something was wrong underneath the facade of their perfect marriage. And yet, instead of her expressing how she honestly felt about this loss of intimacy to him directly, she submitted to Johan and his education in psychology to tell her why she felt the way that she did. Marianne's wish to have another child was a subconscious attempt to address the boredom, lack of love, and lack of joy in their marriage without addressing those issues directly to him. As a divorce lawyer, she works with couples who also stifle each other with unreasonable demands, and though she does not believe that people should be forced to be what they do not wish to be, it is ironic that she would pressure Johan to be what he does not wish to be. How, for instance, she made him feel obligated to visit her parents for dinner every Sunday and pressured him to wear a tuxedo, even though he had told her that he does not like tuxedos. Marianne now realizes that she had become to Johan in their marriage like her own father, whose decision it was for her to become a lawyer. The life and personality that she thought was her own was, in fact, the life that her father and mother had designed for her when she was a little girl.
Sometimes I feel if I've ever really been loved.
Okay, now you're being dramatic.
Thinking back on all of this, Marianne is amazed by her newfound emotional and spiritual independence. They make love on the floor of her office. She had invited Johan over to her house, which was once their house, to sign their divorce papers. Johan smokes a pipe after they finish making love, confident of the connection they once shared before he abandoned her. Now he is sure that she will change her mind about getting a divorce, but she comes out of the bathroom quickly urging him to sign their divorce papers. She even asks him for money to send their daughter Ava to Paris.
It's all here.
Looks like you've been holding out on me.
Marianne's coldness stuns and hurts Johan, and he goes on a rant about Ava's rebelliousness and disrespectful attitude toward his mother when they spoke on the phone. However, Marianne used to be a rebel herself.
What are you going to do? Charge me with smoking?
Now, both of their daughters, Ava and Corinne, have turned out the same way. They boss her around, accuse her of being gone all the time, and blame her for everything. But Marianne and her daughters have a bond of trust and honesty that she did not have with her own mother. Ava is how Marianne was before her mother, and society brainwashed her into being respectful and agreeable to a fault. No, Marianne will not murder Ava's personality as her mother and father had murdered her personality by punishing her for being honest and truthful to herself as well as to others.
It's the basis of democracy that you control your own body.
It has been 5 years since Johan's and Marianne's divorce, and she is now even more confident, assertive, and truthful to herself and to others than before, such as the scene in which she visits her mother, who starts complaining about her injured foot to make Marianne stay with her for tea out of guilt.
Will you stay for coffee?
But Marianne coldly tells her mother that she has a client to meet at the office and cannot stay for tea.
I have to get back. I can't. Sorry.
In the past, Marianne would have stayed with her mother for tea and complained later about doing so. In another scene, Marianne's mother offers her a slice of cake.
Oh, that's way too much.
But Marianne turns it down without a moment's hesitation.
Then it's garbage.
This hurts her mother's feelings, but Marianne does not care. She is on a strict diet, exercises 30 minutes a day, and plays tennis twice a week with Henrik, her new husband, whereas in the past she would have eaten the fattening cake and broken her commitment. But her mother doesn't give up on getting her to conform to her old self easily in asking her if she will attend her father's burial. But after checking her diary, Marianne informs her mother that she will not be attending her father's burial. It is just a formality anyway, but Marianne's mother plays the guilt card by reminding Marianne that her siblings will be attending the burial. Marianne's answer, however, is still no.
Where is this coming from?
Her mother begrudgingly accepts this new version of her daughter, recalling with regret her marriage to her late husband. They rarely disagreed and expressed their true feelings.
I loved your father.
She is a product of her own mother, who grew up in a time when pleasing one's spouse came before pleasing oneself.
All right, stay together for the kids.
Marianne's mother taught her, as she had been taught by her mother, to view sex as sacred and pornography as vulgar. Over time, however, she came to realize that neither sanctified sex nor depravity are right or wrong in themselves, but are both depressing extremes that can make one happy or depressed, depending upon the circumstances. Johan and Marianne are now truthful with themselves and each other because there are no longer any conditions between them to be faithful, to remain the same, or to conform to society's norms. She doesn't have to be his wife. He doesn't have to be her husband, and they no longer have to be what their parents want them to be in order to make love. Now that they can express their true feelings with each other, Johan admits to Marianne that he despises their daughters. This hurts Marianne, but Johan no longer cares about anyone's feelings except his own, if doing so means being untrue to others and, more importantly, to himself. Unlike the past, when he needed cigarettes to manage his feelings, or when he could not tell Marianne that he stopped finding her sexy after she gave birth to their daughter Corinne. Much has changed in the 5 years since Johan's and Marianne's divorce. They are both remarried. By chance, their spouses both leave on trips at the same time, and Marianne and Johan seize upon this opportunity to be together at the old country house that they once shared, once upon a time when they were married. They do this on the day that would have marked their 20th wedding anniversary. But the old house brings back too many memories for Marianne, and Johan calls a friend to loan them his cottage for the weekend. Frederick is curious about Johan's mysterious young mistress, but Johan won't tell him anything, let alone that he's fooling around with his ex-wife. A female he works and sleeps with is certain that he is having an affair with his young big-breasted secretary, but it hurt Ava even more when she asked him if he wanted to end their affair, and he said yes right away without giving her a reason. But Johan did not care. He allowed everyone to gossip as they saw fit, but left them in the dark as to the truth about he and Marianne's new relationship. In the cottage, in bed together, Johan and Marianne look back on their marriage, separate lives, and marvel at how they rediscovered each other and themselves. Their affair is ironic, being that it was Johan's affair which brought about their divorce, and yet here they are together again in the middle of the night in a dark house somewhere in the world, except that this time there are no conditions or barriers preventing them from being truthful with each other. Marianne always wanted this type of relationship, which is why she told Mrs. Palm in the interview that people in relationships should have moderate expectations of one another and should not be pressured into roles that they do not want with each other. At the time that she made this statement, Marianne was not consciously aware of the fact that she was expressing an unconscious wish to be in a non-traditional relationship in which she would not be obligated to love the same person the same way for an entire lifetime. In this cottage in bed together, Marianne thinks back on the way that she and Johan used to be and the affection that he no longer has for their daughters and vice versa. When and how did they get bored with each other, she wonders aloud, but Johan is at peace with the distant and cold relationship he has with his daughters. There is no use in crying over spilt milk, he tells Marianne, for like everything, children grow up, relationships are lost, love, affection, friendship, and solidarity. Everything must die sooner or later, as their marriage died 5 years ago. Marianne told Mrs. Palm in the interview that she had never been unfaithful to Johan. However, Marianne did not tell Mrs. Palm in the interview that she had had 3 affairs going at the same time early in their marriage, but telling Johan about these affairs back in 1955 would have ruined everything, as he was working on his doctoral thesis in dealing with stomach ulcers. She withheld this information as well as other secrets out of her fear of being rejected by him, as her mother and father rejected her whenever she expressed how she truly felt. In this cottage, in bed together, Marianne and Johan now accept each other and themselves. Yes, their daughters Corinne and Ava are spoiled, disrespectful, and selfish, and they may even boss Marianne around. Even so, she accepts them for what they are, and because they are not afraid or ashamed to talk to her honestly about anything, unlike her own mother, whom she could not talk to honestly about anything. Johan and Marianne agree that there had been something dishonest and deceitful in their perfect marriage, and something honest and truthful in Peter and Katerina's imperfect marriage. Marianne alludes to this paradox in the interview in telling Mrs. Palm that the lack of problems is in itself a problem, as it is our dysfunctions which enable us to relate to others with similar dysfunctions. In other words, as the perfect couple, she and Johan had set themselves above the problems of their friends Peter and Katerina. In the cottage, in front of a warm fire, in the middle of the night, in a dark house, somewhere in the world, Marianne and Johan lay in bed side by side, looking back over the years and their lives, and life in general, with smiles, laughter, and an occasional tear. To her, time has made Johan smaller, more handsome, more gentle, and more kind since their divorce. The old Johan, by comparison, was a selfish baby, unconcerned with anyone's comfort or happiness other than his own, such as that time he became angry when she told him that she did not feel like having sex when he felt like having sex, and how he only considered his feelings and not her feelings about having a baby, and how he only considered his feelings and not her feelings when he told her about his affair. Back then, Johan seemed much bigger to her than he does now, because, like a child, his feelings, intellect, and experiences were all that counted. But now, tears, misery, and loss have made him smaller than the universe. But unlike Marianne, who can accept the meaninglessness of life, he cannot accept the meaninglessness of life. A complete turnaround from him telling Mrs. Palm in the interview that he was not a religious man, and how angry Marianne had made him in saying that she was leaving her pregnancy in God's hands. Inversely, as their divorce had made Johan see see himself as a smaller man, their divorce has made Marianne see herself as a greater woman. She had played the mother to Johan, and now she plays the mother to her new husband named Henrik, another grown man, and begging him not to abandon her as she had begged Johan not to abandon her. Henrik also makes demands on her like Johan. However, unlike Johan, whom she grew to depend on for everything, Marianne can coexist with Henrik without losing her identity, because no one will ever share her body, mind, and unique way in which she experiences the world. She can never lose herself again as she lost herself with Johan, when she was under the illusion of there being such a thing as a soul mate. No one will ever share her soul, because no one experiences life, pain, and joy the same way. She once truly believed that Peter and Katerina needed a third language that they could both understand, but this Marianne has since learned is not the case at all. Before Johan and Marianne separated, they found security in love, acceptance, their country house and apartments, their friends, their careers, and their parents. But the truth, Johan points out to Marianne, is that we are alone in our feelings and thoughts, and that true security can only be found by looking inside of oneself. Seeking that security outside of themselves had transformed Johan and Marianne into emotional illiterates.
Okay.
By unplugging them from their own unique experiences with life, as Adam and Eve had done metaphorically in hiding their naked bodies out of shame. Johan and Marianne were once naked, free, and exercised no forethought before honestly expressing themselves. Johan can vividly remember helping his uncle and Aunt Emma in their bookstore. Back then, he even wanted to open his own bookstore, and Marianne once dreamed of defending oppressed people and the poor before her father steered her into the field of law, which paid real money. Back then, Johan and Marianne were not ashamed of being themselves until their parents and the world pressured them into conforming and unloving themselves in order to be accepted. And like Adam and Eve, Johan and Marianne hid themselves underneath layers upon layers of lies, phony smiles, and false consideration for others, not out of unselfishness, but out of cowardice and ignorance of who they really were. For how could they ever know and appreciate others if they didn't know and appreciate themselves? After all, loneliness is a condition that one must learn to accept in order to be an individual. Fellowship may be found in friendship, religion, politics, love, and so on. But when all the dust settles, one shall always end up as one begins, alone. Making peace with the utter loneliness of true self protects one from having unrealistic expectations about sharing one's life with someone else. Nothing is shared. Absolute loneliness is something Marianne resisted when she sought Johan's opinion as to whether she should have their baby, and also why at that time she resented his honest opinion that she alone should make the decision about having the baby, since it was she alone who would experience the pain and joy of having it, and because she strove for outward security or his approval and acceptance to feel secure in herself and her decision to have the baby. Marianne's ultimate decision to abort the baby was also her decision to abort herself. She could never share the experience of having a baby with Johan or anyone else, because her experiences are uniquely hers and non-transferable to anyone else. foreshadowed at the beginning of the film by Marianne telling Mrs. Palm that couples that came to her seeking a divorce expected each other to stay the same way forever and not change. Everything changes, even Johan. He now believes that marriages should be short-term arrangements. He now despises his own daughters and thinks that they are boring. They also feel the same way about him now, that they are young, beautiful women and dating boys themselves. Things were quite different when they were little, when he spoiled them so badly that the nanny quit, and when he played with them and read them fairy tales. So what happened? Johan tells Marianne that life happened because children don't stay young forever and eventually they grow up. In fact, all relations will eventually break off. Love, affection, loyalty, friendship, everything gives out, which is not unusual in the grand scheme of life. It just is what it is. Marianne now understands the greater meaning of Johan's statement when he told her that every domicile in life is only temporary. This concludes part 3 of my analysis of director Ingmar Bergman's 1974 film Scenes from a Marriage. If you liked it, I'd appreciate you leaving a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Godfather of Cinema and hit the bell to receive a notification of my future film analyses and reviews. I will see you soon.